Hey there guys, welcome back to the Guitar Hour podcast. This is episode number 149 on the 16th of December 2020. My name is David Beebe, one of your hosts for this evening, and joining me today is Dan Smith.
Hello.
Dr. Jake Wilson.
Hello.
Tom Quayle.
Hello.
And we are incredibly honoured and blown away to be joined by the one and only awe-inspiring Mr. Steve Vai.
Hey, folks.
Hello.
Hey.
Hey. Hello.
What an amazing thing to have you here. Thank you so much for joining us.
Very nice to be here. Thank you for the invite.
It's truly an honour. Thank you. We've recently done a few episodes on the show about guitar heroes in the wake of Eddie's passing, and we were doing a bit of a roundtable about, I think Dan coined the term of if we had a Mount Rockmore, whose four faces would we personally have on it? And
Not Rockmore.
unanimously, everyone, when we all went round the table, it was Steve Vai was on all of our individual Rockmores, and
That's pretty heavy. Thank you.
so it
would be the first time I was really stoned.
Yes. Nice.
And so Lee Wrathe, who you know as the Ibanez marketing director of the UK, sort of reached out. He listens to the show as a friend of ours and said, if Steve's that big an influence, can see if we can hook you up and get him on the show. And so thanks, shout out to Lee there for doing that. And we just blown away to have this opportunity to chat to you. So I think the first thing, maybe if we just set the ball rolling with just the current scene of how you're doing. Obviously this year has been different, to say the least, for everybody.
Yeah.
And what has the situation been like for you over this last 9 months, and how are things?
Yeah.
What had you planned that have been changed, I guess?
Thank you. Well, for me, a lot of it's been business as usual because I live in my studio, basically, and there was some. A lot of instances where musicians that I might usually get together with, I couldn't. But still, with even the advent of some of the technology that's come along through the lockdown, even it's forged ways to communicate and to keep in touch and actually be creative with others, just like we're doing in a way. So the things that I had planned last year or this year, 2020, I was planning on recording. I have about 4 hours of orchestra music that I've composed through the years that I've had performed, but I've had recorded, but never really liked the performances, and decided to bring it all into studios in Aarhus, Denmark, with the Aarhus Radio Symphony Orchestra. It's about a 90-piece. And the Metropole Orchestra in Holland. It was about a 1-month project, and we were originally going to do it last May and June, and that got canceled. And then we were supposed to do it. I'm supposed to be there now. Canceled that, so I'm pushing that off. And I had a tour scheduled to kick off in August of 2021. And, we're still on the fence about that. I keep in touch with my booking agent to see what, the promoters are doing. It's been pretty tough. Pretty tough. It's been impossible for touring musicians. And I always look at it like this. If you notice, if you look back at your career and your life, you may find many situations where you expected things to go a certain way and you almost demanded them to be a certain way, but they weren't. Things just changed. And one of the other things you may notice if you look back with a level perspective, those changes were vital in introducing other aspects of your life into other aspects of being, situations and opportunities and people, and that have changed as a result of things that have changed against your desire for them to change, that actually turned out for the best for you. Okay, this is important to see. It happens all the time. We don't really take a moment to look back and see how implemented change how resilient we are to moving forward under whatever situation is presented to us. You've all done it, and you're all doing it now. So through the changes that were imposed on my life as a musician or otherwise during the lockdown, what I did was I dealt with them as they arose, because that's the only time you can deal with them. And because at the time that they come, all the cooperative components might have been different than what you expected they were going to be. So all bets are off, really, on demanding that things go a certain way. You know, like, I should be touring right now. This is crazy. I should be touring. How am I going to make a living? You know, those damn politicians, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So, and many musicians have put in, a lot of musicians live hand to mouth from gig to gig. And I understand their situation, but now you're challenged to figure it out. And guess what? You've been doing it. You've been figuring it out. If you look back at all the things that you've done instead of touring, you might recognize many of those things were very helpful and part of your creative process. And so that's what I do. I try to figure it out as I go, because it's safer that way. And that doesn't mean that I don't project certain schedules and stuff. You know, like I got schedules for the rest of the day, but I think they're all going to go away because, hey, look, I'm on vacation, baby.
I can't think of a better reason.
You know?
Absolutely.
Who the hell wants to do email? Anyway, you get the point, right? You know what I'm saying there. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, you've, from my understanding, you've always been a fairly healthy guy with exercise and sort of physically and stuff, and sort of with the sort of contemplative thing and the meditation side of things. I mean, I guess that stuff helps in the, if I'm hearing you correctly, in this sort of day by day, in the moment kind of dealing with things as they arise. You mentioned about the technology earlier on, and one of the things that I think we've all enjoyed was you embracing that, and some of the sort of things that have emerged from, what's the lemonade out of the lemons, being like this window into your world of how you operate and think on a very personal level with the live stream things. Did you think of that? Was that suggested to you? Was it just something? Was this just part of the the day by day dealing with it? Like, I'm going to investigate this technology and this new way of connecting. How did that come about?
Well, I've seen some pretty extraordinary things happen during lockdown in regards to the way things are evolving here. For me, in the relatively simple world that I live, I had a concept that, we all have creative ideas that we store in the back of our head, and I call it the infinity shelf. And when the right cooperative components come together, you get a feeling to do something. You get an impulse. There's almost like a intuitional kind of impulse to do something. So I had this thought for many years that I would love to create these live streams, where I talk about various things. I mean, but I have very different interests, and one of them is obviously music and the guitar. And I know that there's an interest from other people on hearing from me about those kinds of things, career, because it helps them, kind of figure out how to navigate. So I developed this. I thought I would love to develop a online kind of a live stream called Alien Guitar Secrets, where I can just do this kind of thing. And I've thought about monetizing it and building, educational curriculums for music and doing all that thing. And maybe I'll do that one day, but this was more simple. But there's also the esoteric side of me that loves to delve into, more spiritual matters and things like that I've studied. And I wanted to do a live stream about that. And I did. And that was called Under It All. And I did about 7 episodes of each. But that was the way that, for me, I remember feeling, I really want to do that. I really want to do that. I can do it. Why don't I just do it right now? And something was saying, no, not right. It's just not right yet. Don't worry about it. You got other things you can do. Don't worry. That I'll let you know when it's the right time to do that. So then all of a sudden the pandemic came and everything shut down. And my media team, Stephen and Stephanie Bradley, fantastic guys, kids, said, Steve, it's lockdown. Everybody's doing these live streams. This could really be a good opportunity. And then the little voice said, okay, now, do it now. So that was the way that technology and situation came together for me a little bit during the lockdown.
When was do you remember when your last gig was before all of this?
Oh boy. I'd have to go look on my calendar. Let me see. I don't know. Oh, wait a minute. Maybe it was the gig at NAMM, perhaps.
Yeah, we were there
when I was introducing the PIA.
That by the way, I presume you've had a lot of people tell you this, but that brought me to tears. That gig.
Oh, thank you.
In a good way, I should point out. By the way, it brought me to tears in a phenomenal way. So that was, for being the last show that you did in 2020, that was quite a remarkable show. So
thank you.
For good reason, of course, because it was a monumental occasion, but it was absolutely phenomenal. So thank you very much for that, by the way. It was extraordinary.
Well, thank you for coming.
That was great.
Thank you for coming. We make a good team.
Absolutely.
Beforehand, drinking in the bar, Tom and I, and the sirens started, and a fire in the house, and I nearly knocked him over in the speed I ran past him, because my first Vice show was on that tour in the
me too.
For the Fire Garden thing, and that's how I remember it starting. As this is amazing.
Yeah, I pulled out some old stops.
Oh, that set list was my dream set list. I couldn't believe it.
Oh,
it was
great!
Every track was just this is it. So
thank you.
Wonderful gig.
It was a fun gig. Had a lot of great players come down. Thank you.
Yeah. How's your relationship with the guitar itself at the moment? Because there's the track that you released, Candle
Power.
That was it, not Powder, Candle Power. And I was wondering when did that come about, and the timeline for that? Was that something that happened in this period of lockdown? Some people have dived into the guitar in as like a solace thing, practice, and then other people have felt a bit more reluctant because of, it's a reminder of what's going on. But it seemed like that was a moment perhaps of introspection. But when was the timeline of you coming up with that tune?
Yeah, thank you. Well, as long as I can remember, the one thing that has always been constant for me is my interest in being able to play something that's a little bit outside of my normal playground. You know what I mean? Like coming up with something new. I love, ever since I was 13 and I picked up the guitar, the ability to play something was always just fascinating to me. And to imagine something and not be able to play it, and then work on it, and then all of a sudden being able to play it, I would say that in and of itself was the driving factor behind my entire career. It was the number one priority. And everything else just was a consequence of that. And it's still that way today, where I love getting ideas and then going, you get excited to say, so you know what that feels like, right? You get an idea and you get enthusiastic about it. That is that's your roadmap to success. The following your enthusiasm for a good idea. There's nothing else. Everybody thinks that it requires something else, like luck, or it doesn't. It requires passion. It doesn't even require discipline, because discipline is not as clean as passion. You know what I mean? With discipline, I got to sit, I got to do this. I'm going to get this. With passion, the clock goes like this, So I had this one idea, many ideas that I'll write them down, or I'll speak them into something that I record, and I might pick them up years later. That's kind of how I do things, because I could never complete all of the interesting ideas that I feel. When I say interesting, they're interesting to me, and that's of the greatest value too, that you're following things that are interesting to you and not necessarily following things to placate an audience that is fickle or has different tastes and things like that, that you feel you have to follow, because if you don't, you won't fit in or you'll fail. Okay. Because so following your own creative ideas is the ticket, because you win in two ways. One, the most vital way, you're satisfying yourself on a creative level. There is nothing that's going to satisfy you as much as that, because it feels like joy. It's exciting. It's you're exercising your potential and your purpose in a sense. So that always feels great. Second way that you win is when you're doing something that you really enjoy, that flows into what you're doing, and the product has that in it. It has the frequency, so to speak, of that in it, and that attracts people, a particular type of person that resonates with it. Not everybody. See, that's another place where, you know, the little ego, the little I, gets obstructed, or it obstructs your ability to enjoy those first two things, because it says, well, if everybody doesn't like this, then, you know, what? So if you can find the satisfaction of doing what you like, and then the appropriate audience will be attracted to it, the right audience for you, that's a win. It's a win for you and them. So I've been lucky that whenever I seem to follow these crazy little ideas, crazy ideas that I have, and then I manifest them, the right audience for me seems to manifest. You know what I mean? So when it came to Candle Power, it was just one of these little ideas that I had. I'd love to, one of these days, I'd love to do a song, and this is what was going on in my head. This was the idea, where there was, I use a clean sounding guitar, which was a Strat style, which was different for me. And you guys all know the story. You know, I use my fingers, which is like when I have to pick with my fingers, I'm not very good at all. But I still wanted something. I always say to myself, okay, what you're doing there by not using a whammy bar, not using a clean guitar with a clean sound with your fingers, that's nothing unique at all. You know, what are you going to do that's unique? What are you going to do you never heard and you never played? And I present that demand to myself every song, even if it's just a little riff. I highly recommend trying that. Just tell yourself, what am I going to, that's if you're a musician that sort of like that what I'm saying makes sense, where your real driving joy is like the fascination of playing something different and cool. For some people, it's just coming up with a great song. You know, they don't care about this. That's a distraction. You know, what they want is the right song. You know, what they want is the right clothing or something. You know, they want the right performance. They don't even care if it's a great song or not. They just want the energy. Whatever it is fine. For me, it's the coolness of doing something weird, quirky, and beautiful. I like it to be beautiful. Beautiful, not always beautiful. Maybe effective is the word. So I had this idea, and it was just an idea, you know, of doing this kind of thing where you bend notes in various directions while releasing others and pulling off on others. And I saw it in my mind, and I got very excited. I got a little scared. And I just sat and worked on it for weeks. Okay, so now that happened before the pandemic. But then when the lockdown happened, I thought, okay, let me work this, you know. So no, wait a minute, I'm wrong. I've got a good memory, but it's short. So I as far as things like timing goes, don't ever depend on me for a correct answer.
We can all be forgiven for the timeline of this year as well.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I can't even believe it. It's like, what happened? Okay. So it was before the pandemic that I started working on it, you know, but then in lockdown, I finished it, and it took a long time, and I presented it. And I have to tell you, the reason and I called the technique joint shifting. It's not like unique. I mean, it was for me at the time, But I know that I had come to learn that it's kind of like a country riff to do that kind of thing. And then somebody was saying, oh, it's just like Jerry Donahue. And I was like, I went and I checked out Jerry Donahue, and the guy's a beast.
Man.
Total animal, And I'm like, yeah, like Jerry Donahue, but not really, it's kind of, it's a little different, but it didn't matter, because what I thought when I did it is this old man needed to work weeks to get that one riff, and you can see the riff. And one of the other reasons I did it, besides the fact that I love seeing my fingers move like that, it's bizarre, and the sound doesn't sound like anything I've ever heard. Sorry, I said it, and there it is, and it's true to me. But I knew that there'd be some very ambitious young players that might see that technique and just take it to another whole level. I see that technique being taken to a completely absurd level that doesn't even sound, it sounds like I can hear it. It's like when you listen to, let's say, an oud player, where it's a stringed instrument, but it doesn't sound anything like a guitar. It's doing something completely different. I think this technique, if somebody grabbed it and ran with it, one of these young guys, and really, really worked it, there's so much that could be done. It could be another whole sound, but I'm just not that guy to do it. I give you the recipe.
So when you get these ideas, is there in any way a kind of shelf life of enthusiasm where you have to pounce on them and get them done, or are you much more sort of patient with it, and that you still think they're great ideas even later on in the future?
That's a great question. Thank you. And it's one that I've wrestled over my whole life. If there's anything that's created stress in me, it's the fact that I'll never be able to accomplish all of the ideas I have on my infinity shelf. You know what I mean? But to your point, some of them, that one idea might form, and it may not necessarily dissolve, but expand into something else.
Yeah, interesting.
So that's what I look for. And some of them drop off. But here's what I recognize. Here's what I realized. Your entire life has only unfolded in your now, right? So your now is the only time you have, which is eternity anyway. So if I'm doing anything in my now that's creative and fulfilling, that's it. It doesn't matter if you're never gonna get to all those other things. So it started to become weird for me to be depressed about things I'm not going to get to. When right now I can get to something that's going to make me feel a part of the creative process. I can follow my bliss now, and your bliss is your bliss. Do you know what I mean? If you're feeling good and you're doing something creative now, that's what matters. All the fantasy stuff of the future can actually derail you. That, for me, that's what I noticed.
Has there ever been a sort of point that's been the opposite of that, per se, in your career, where you felt there's just, for whatever reason, been less sort of creative stuff flowing, and you've had to have a coping strategy for that in order to keep yourself inspired? Or do you find that it is a constant flow of creativity and you are always having new ideas and they have to be stored on the infinity shelf for use later, and you're sort of running out of room on there, if you like? Or do you have these periods where you have to kind of use a strategy to get creativity to happen for yourself?
Thank you. Good question. I'm under the belief that everybody has a genius within them. And what that genius is that thing that they do that seems extraordinarily simple, very gratifying. There's no fear in it. There's no fear of failure, no fear of future. It's an organic expression of their unique creativity. And it can show itself in things, in very subtle things. And it could be in anything. It could be in cooking for a person. It could be in in teaching, it could be in politics, it could be in math, it could be in music, it could be whatever it is. There's something in a person that is, when they find it, when you'll know what it is when you're doing it, because while you're doing it, you feel really good. You know, there's a feeling of creativity, and usually it includes somebody else. But and people who are geniuses are people, I think, that have access to their genius on command. And I've seen this in people like Frank Zappa, Devin Townsend, Jacob Collier, Tommy Mars. I mean, there's people that I feel are creative in the moment all the time, that never at a lack. I'm not that guy. Okay, I want to make that clear. I wish I was. I have to wait for the gods of inspiration to sprinkle fairy dust on me before I can capture something. And when I do, I document it somehow. And I'm saying this because this is important to you, because your creative intentions are valuable and they are worthy. And the only thing that makes them unworthy is your belief that they're not worthy. You understand what I'm saying? So if you find that you're doing something that even slightly gives you the feeling of enthusiasm, my suggestion is to somehow document it. So that's what I do. And it can happen at any time. I know when it's happening. I absolutely do. For me, maybe it happens I would say 4 or 5% of the time. But I can do a lot with that, because once you document something like that, even if it's just a little melody that goes ya da 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 ya, or Candle Power, that riff, that was the only thing I had for the whole song, the only thing that lived on the infinity shelf. And that's and I knew when I played, I said, oh, what is that? Oh, that feels kind of cute. Okay, got to go do this other thing I'm doing right now, but let me grab this. And I just put it on my iPhone. I mean, my iPhone I've been doing this since I was 13. And I've been capturing these little ideas whenever they come up. And now, this is just great for that. I've got thousands and thousands. And then I'll listen to that. And that was like Candle Power. I heard that riff. And although at the time that I was going to hit the play button to listen to it, I wasn't really inspired in that moment to write something. The moment that I heard that, I was back in that headspace. So you can kind of cheat. You can cheat your genius. If you can capture a little piece of it and put it away safe, and then come back and play with it, it has the power to ignite in you the inspiration that it originally carried. At least that's the way it works for me. And that's how I try to find my music.
What I love about this is it sounds, from what you're saying, like I think a lot of artists can put undue pressure on themselves to be that genius and be creative in the moment all the time. And you can be very disappointed in yourself if that doesn't happen. And you can start to, almost fall out of love with what you're doing because you don't achieve what you want to achieve on a daily, regular basis. And I think what you're saying is so great, because it allows you to have that moment and document it and allow yourself the ability to come back to it and work on it at a later stage and reignite that inspiration, and not have so much constant pressure on yourself to always be at your A game and always be creative. Whenever you sit down in front of the computer, whenever you sit down with the guitar, you don't have that feeling of pressure. And I love that, because I know I've experienced that before, where I've been disappointed with myself because I didn't achieve what I set out to. Whereas if I'd parked that idea at the moment of inspiration and come back to it later, I may have found that I would have developed that idea in a much more creative way later down the line.
Very nice. Yeah. Well, one of our enemies is psychological time. It has, in reality, it has no power over us unless we believe it does. And as such, that's the thing that creates the obstacles to your ability to really continue with fulfilling that thing that you set out to fulfill. Because you said you got disappointed because you didn't accomplish it. But you didn't accomplish it perhaps in the time period that you demanded that it needed to be accomplished. So whereas the universe is probably telling you, your whole concept of time, my friend, is not really true. So why don't you let me deal with that? And the right things will happen when they're supposed to, as opposed to what you believe. You understand what I'm saying there? So what I'm saying is, once you're engaging in a creative product where you're feeling the enthusiasm for it, you're feeling that the enjoyment of it with others or whatever, and you're rolling along, you will, things like deadlines, they change, okay? You can reach deadlines sooner with greater quality product, or later with greater quality product, as long as you're following your bliss. When you start suffering from psychological time, which means, holy shit, I got to get this done now. What's going to happen in such and such? This is psychological time. It's different than watch time or something. It's time that we impose in our minds that we have. If I'm not famous by the time I'm 27, then my life is not worth living. I'm a failure. Okay. This is a battle against psychological time that's actually an illusion, and it cuts at the root. I mean, just look at it. Let's say you're with a group of guys and you guys are having a great time. It's your band. You're working on songs, you're taking ideas, throwing out ideas, taking better ideas, navigating the path through the final song that has everybody's, thing in it, right? Everybody's focus and intensity, and it's got that in it. And you're following that. Now, nothing's going to get in your way. Nothing gets in a group's way like when they hit that stride, except fear that they're not going to make it. Fear of something that doesn't even exist, like a psychological time, and so that's what I'd say was a situation with me. I can only mention this stuff because I recognize it in myself, and that's psychological. The illusion of psychological time and the detriment that it has towards your creative being.
So something that's just coming to mind now, actually, I wonder if this has a bearing upon the decisions of where you put your time creatively. Because as a fan, you have such a stellar concrete legacy and catalogue of music. But the last 2 decades has been, I'd say, fewer studio records. And you're composing and doing all of these wonderful creative things, but the time span is a bit longer, it seems, between records. And I wonder if some of that, just as a coming to me now, as a curiosity, is there a comfort or a peace with this psychological time that you can work at the longer time periods where it takes as long as it takes? I don't know if that question makes any sense really now, but
it absolutely makes sense. And to be perfectly honest, it is a bone of contention that I have within myself, is that it takes me so long to crank out studio records. And I sit there and I say, why is it taking me so long? And I realize, well, it's because there's so many other little things I like to do, like people in the listening community that listen to various artists and stuff. They may assume that the artist is constantly working on music stuff, and there was a period in my life where that was all I did. And right now it's not uncommon that maybe 80% of my waking moments are doing something musically creative, but they're not always geared towards getting a studio record out, and plus I've slowed down, purposefully and enjoyably. I just kind of, but I still love playing. So right now I'm working on an solo acoustic vocal record. How's that for something different from me?
Wow.
And it's hard. It's really hard because playing the acoustic guitar, I've spent precious little time on it to get it right. I mean, there's nothing virtuosic about it, but there's this particular type of musical melodic DNA that I really enjoy. And I had a whole bunch of songs on the Infinity Shelf that have that DNA in it. So I decided, I thought one day, I'm going to make it a record. It's going to be acoustic guitar and singing. And it was another one of those things where in lockdown, I was doing the Alien Guitar Secrets, and I did a version of a song called The Moon and I, where I just played acoustic guitar and sang, which is so unlike me. I don't do this. And it seemed to have been well received. And I thought, then the little voice said, okay, now's the time to do that project. You know what I'm saying? But it was a lot harder to do it than I thought. And plus my voice is so limited and I'm demanding so much from it. It just takes time. So I've decided not to worry about how much time these things take anymore, because I'm not in any race with anything, because I've already did it. I'm completely and utterly satisfied with my contribution. I never expected to have been able to have done so much. Could have done a lot more, but I say this so that it can hopefully be an inspiration to others, because I know that it is a way out of the madness. And what that is being friendly and happy, comfortable, being appreciative for what it is where you're at right now, being friendly with where you're at right now. And I mean, when I say where you're at right now, I'm referring to what you're playing, the way you play, where your chops are at, the people, your living conditions, your economics, your relationships, with the business, the amount of gear you have, the amount of gear you don't have, all those things you want, all those things you have. When you can find a way to just be friendly with it all as what is, this changes everything, because then it's easy it's easier to know where you want to go from there in a healthy direction. You understand? Because when you're in a state of ease like that, mental ease, which is a stress-free perspective of yourself, your natural creative instincts become more amplified. Does this make sense? Sometimes I think I'm just talking.
No, absolutely. I used to feel very quite creative at a certain point after a certain act for some reason, maybe because it was like quite a relaxed state, and I was like, oh, maybe I want to go and play the piano right now. Don't even play the piano. But I do like I'm finding the kind of language that you're using to describe some of these things really interesting. Like you said, I've not doing as much music stuff because there's many of the things that I like to do. Now, if you're in a certain other mindset, you might say there's plenty of other things that I have to do right now. So it's like this whole mess of things where things are getting in the way and you can't get to that or whatever. But I kind of like the idea that, I've just got all this stuff that I like to do. Music is one of them, but there's these other things as well. And it's not like the music thing is sort of, I think where it might be difficult is in situations where there's that cross between music as a creative endeavor and then music as a job. So if you play a guitar for a living, it's kind of, splitting the two things off and still having enough creative energy left, if you see what I mean.
Yeah. I always feel that everybody should play the guitar because it's great. Everybody, or some instrument, it's a birthright. It's
and an Ibanez Pier guitar as well.
And an Ibanez Pier guitar. Two of them.
Of course.
Yeah. But the thing where it goes squirrely for a lot of people is once they pick up a guitar, they believe that now they have to be great. They have to be great. And not only do they have to be great, but they have to be successful. And then the question arises in their mind, is this going to be my career? How am I going to make a career out of playing the guitar when how do you make money doing this? Okay, so that's one question that I know arises in the mind of a lot of people, young players. But here's what I might say about that. But I need 1 second to think about it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. If you can find a way, if a person can find a way to, like I said, just be okay with where they're at right now at playing, then they're gonna be able to evolve in any direction a lot smoother and a lot easier. And if you're the kind of person that absolutely and unequivocally follows their interest without making any excuses, with no fear at all, you may, and let's just say hypothetically, playing the guitar is that thing, it's not going to feel like a struggle. There's nothing that's going to feel fearful about it. You're not going to be worrying about making it a career. It just is. That's the way it was for me. I couldn't do anything else. I didn't think about the future. Like, am I going to make this? Is this going to be what I have to do for the rest? You don't think about the rest of your life when you're 12. You know what I mean? And but then there's people that like the guitar and they like the idea of playing it, but they like the idea of doing other things. But there's a confusion or there's conflict about guilt. There can be guilt that they're not giving it all they got. They're not giving it everything they can to be that famous, successful, accomplished musician that they believe they need to be in order to be happy. It's a mistaken premise. What makes you happy is following your bliss and not worrying about that other stuff. You will be guided appropriately. And if you want to play the guitar and develop incredible chops, incredible skills, you're not going to have to force yourself to practice. It's just going to happen. It will just happen. If you want to just be a songwriter and you only need to know a little bit about the guitar, that's what you're going to do. You can feel guilty about not being a virtuoso, but it's not going to do you any good, because then if you were a virtuoso, you're not going to feel the bliss in it. You're not going to enjoy the potential peaks of something that you've engaged in unless it's part of your organic makeup and not something that you chased to fill an egoic dream that can never really be filled. So if you're playing the guitar and you're enjoying it, the end, that's it. That's all you need. If you're feeling like I need to practice 8 hours a day, 30-hour workout, Steve Vais, I'm getting that, I'm doing that. If you're excited about doing that, by all means, do it. Nothing will stop you. If you feel like it's something you need to and have to do in order to keep up, and then you may be your ego is bamboozling into you. Your ego is bamboozling you into something that will never bring you satisfaction. It'll never be good enough for you. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have any sort of techniques to mitigate that ego thing creeping in?
Yeah. If what you're doing has tension in it or resistance, if you find yourself complaining about it in your mind, if you find yourself being frustrated at all, if you find yourself even being impatient or angry, that's your ego getting in the way of your creative bliss. If when you're doing something, you find clarity, you find a sense of timelessness, you find a sense of eagerness, a sense of navigating beautifully, a sense of problems becoming opportunities, then you're following your natural creative instincts, which is your natural state of being. That's what you're supposed to do. This is the thing that is natural to you. All else is madness.
I'm guessing that obviously this doesn't mean, because the creative process can still be hard, but still be bliss in a way. So it's not, because I'm thinking about relating this to practice as well as the creative process.
The way that the creative process becomes easier is in the positive expectation of the inspiration that is going to arise in you about something. Does that make sense? So here's what I mean by that. If you're sitting there and you're going, okay, I got to come up with an idea. I need an idea. Shit. What? And then and I see this so many times. I get asked about it so many times. And it's sitting there and there's no idea coming. Then there's the fear. What if I never have another good idea again? You know? And then there's the fear of, well, what if I come up with this? I got this, but this isn't as good as Heartbreaker, or, you know, whatever it is that you're comparing what you do. All of these things are the deterrents, and they're the ego. You know what I mean? Now, that doesn't mean that you don't have a creative overview, but when you're in a state of bliss in your creative process, there's no the problems don't happen. They're not seen as problems. People that you expected you needed to fulfill something in order for your project to work, and they don't, they're not the end of your project. When you're in your state of enthusiastic creativity, you find ways easily. You use everything that doesn't work as a guideline to where you find things that do work. You know, this can only be your state of awareness when you're not in a state of fear about what you're doing.
And was and is this the case for you from a purely, if we put creativity to one side, because there is a fundamental technical facility that's required on the instrument, and you know, a lot of the music that you play, both in the studio and live, is very technically demanding. It requires a very specific level of facility on the instrument. Did you find, and do you find now, that the same thing that you're saying with creativity, where you're making, you're doing it in such a way that you're always in this bliss state? You're not going through, you know, difficulties with this. You're trying to make it as
No. I get. Thank you, and let me try to clarify that. Everything that I'm telling you guys, I'm working on.
I see.
I'm working on. I am not.
Got you.
This
is a note to self.
Note to self and note to you. It's stuff, but I have to say, it's stuff that I recognize as being true. You know, it's practical. You know, practical and reasonable, and I work on this stuff. You know, I am not. I could be sitting right alongside of you. You know what I mean, and just talking about these things. So yes, I get frustrated. Like, for instance, okay, like I'm doing this acoustic record, and there was this one thing. Now, for the way that, if you guys know, you know the way I play, it's a little reckless. It's got a lot of delay, and it's distorted, and you know, a lot of it's whatever it is. Acoustic guitar, there's no secrets at sea. You know?
Absolutely.
You have no excuse. You ain't got no whammy bar, you know. But it was fun because when it does sound good, it sounds really good. But when there's a buzz and you can only hit the string in one spot so it doesn't buzz, and that become very frustrating for me. But I know. Well, let me continue with this. As a matter of fact, I was doing something. I know I shouldn't mention this, but no need for any emails about this. Okay. I had this one thing I was working on, and it was a very peculiar chord way up high in the neck, right? And my thumb was like this, and I was sitting there. I was meditating on it for a very long time until it came out, until it was starting to sound perfect. Once it started to sound perfect, I had to do it. I have a process. My process is struggle through it until you can get it to sound, until you can get it without a mistake. Focus intensely on the quality of the tone. Get it to the point where you do not have to think about playing it. Now you're ready to start making it sound like music. That's my, you know, once I can play it without thinking about it, then it creates an opening to infuse what you're playing with something different than just finger memory. You understand what I'm saying? But I when I took my hand away, I had I did something to my my thumb. Now I have trigger thumb. It goes gink,
Oh, no.
gink, 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 and I have to get surgery on my hand.
Oh,
And I'm getting surgery.
dangerous card.
Yeah, and I'm getting surgery on my arm next week. I've got that tore from playing like this for many years. You know, it's all torn up. But that's not a problem. You figure it out. But yes, there would be moments of frustration, and for me that's okay. But because there was one simple, practical, reasonable thing that I knew was true. And I knew this was true when I was working with Frank Zappa, which was the only thing that enabled me to perform some of the very abstract things that he was requesting of me. And that's this: if you don't quit, you can't fail. If you don't quit, how can you fail? Right? Now, of course, you have to bring into this practical reason. You're not gonna try to do something that's impractical. So I knew that if I took a piece of music that Frank handed me, if I looked at it and I knew it was possible, then my simple thought was, well, then it has to be possible for me. Why not? Because if it's possible, and if I don't quit, how can I not achieve it? So that's like when I was doing Candle Power. And like I say, I see guitar players, young guitar players these days, that is so fascinating. I mean, they make me look, old, slow, and sloppy, and that, as it should be. But with something like the joint shifting and Candle Power, that was very difficult for me, that might be easier for some. For me, as I was going through it, yeah, man, it wasn't all bliss. It was not all. I was like, but the bliss was in knowing, when this is, I know I can get this. I know I can do this. And that's all you need. There was no, I can't, so that's what I needed. But the only thing that enabled me to have that perspective was my enthusiasm for it. There's so many things that, like you guys do, that if I had to try them, I would be in a state of, fear. I wouldn't be able to, simple things for someone else could be completely impossible for me. So, but they're not my bliss, they don't interest me. They don't, if I'm interested in things like that, it's probably my ego, but being able to play in my mind that riff, and I'm just using Candle Power. There's something in each of my songs that has that, but being able to do it, I knew that I could, if I just stuck with it.
There has to be this thing about, as you say, the clock running away from you, in that it becomes barrierless. And we've talked about practice a lot on the podcast, and I think there are certainly merits to having maybe a schedule at times. But I know for the biggest changes in my life have been where casting my mind back all those years to scouring through the Alien Love Secrets tab books. Like, I have to be able to, or, listen to the records, working these out. I have to be able to do these kind of things. And it morphs over the years, but I think that to different things as your tastes and your horizons expand. But that thing about the clock running away is so true, because I know when I'm working on something, the aspect of having a 5-hour or a 10-hour workout does become irrelevant to me. It becomes about, I'm not looking at the clock thinking, I've got another hour to do. Yeah. I'm looking at the clock thinking, I've gone 2 hours over, I'm supposed to be doing something else, because I've been so obsessed. And for me, and I think, Tom, you've mentioned this in the past as well, the biggest transformations in playing have occurred because of that kind of a thing. And perhaps the 30-hour workout, Steve I workout, has perhaps been misinterpreted at times over the years. I don't know, in terms of the well, I don't mean to interrupt, but I would say the 30-hour workout is for people that want to do it. Sure, yeah, and you said that earlier on, exactly, yes, in terms of... Yeah, it's not. It might not necessarily be for teachers to give a student that wants to play Bob Dylan songs, you know what I mean? So you have to play this. This is Vi. You have to do this. I'm sorry, I interrupted, though. Go ahead. No, it's all that. I was just recalling that effect where I look at the clock and it's an hour beyond where I'm supposed to be elsewhere. Not looking at the clock thinking there's an hour to go to drill this thing, because it's become it's a bliss, as you say. It's a passion where I can't not do it because that thing has become obsessive. I've been
because that after you accomplish those exercises or whatever it is, your playing just changes.
Yep.
And there's been two huge shifts in my life. Once when I was a teenager with the very kind of technical side of things, and once I was a bit older with more harmonic stuff and improvisation and things. But there's both times have been the shift has occurred because of an obsession as opposed to a clock watching exercise, I think.
And that's exactly what I was referring to. Thanks, David. That's exactly what is meant by following your bliss without any excuses. It's actually really, really simple, but it's so simple that it's hard, because the ego is just gonna make demands on you that are unrealistic, and then it creates fantasies and that are just unrealistic. And when those fantasies aren't met, they're met with feelings of being a failure. This is nonsense.
It's the adult brain. Like, if I think about I started playing when I was like 14, and I got pretty decent fairly quick in between, say, 14 and 19, because I was just like, yeah, this is amazing, and just didn't think about practice. I just played a lot. You hear, I think people ask Guthrie about practice sessions and stuff, and he said, I didn't practice, I just played a lot because he wanted to. And I think if you kind of let, you sort of become a grown-up, if you like, and start thinking about these things, it's like one of those cartoons where somebody's flying and they're not supposed to be, and then they know that they're flying, and like, I'm not supposed to be here, and then they just fall instantly.
Exactly, yeah.
I mean, there's something to be said for, I guess, if you're trying to find a structure and in different periods of your life, and this is not to say, because we talk about this a lot on the show in terms of how do we manage things, but it's not to say that all structures should be sort of thrown out the window. I don't think that, but just from my own experience of the big shifts, the monumental kind of paradigm shifts of playing, that's where it's occurred for me.
It's the same here.
Yeah.
It's always been those moments of deep obsession with something.
Yeah.
Where you've taken that deep dive and you've not really thought about almost why you're doing it, because the ego is the why.
Yeah.
Why am I doing this? I'm doing this because I want to be better at this for what, because someone else can do it, or because it's necessary for the style of playing I want to do. Those biggest shifts have always occurred for me with those moments of obsession where you just, the time just becomes a sink, and you've no idea how long you've spent doing it. And you don't even look at the clock at the end. You just continue till 4 or 5 a.m. because you couldn't get out of it,
Yeah. And if you notice while you're doing that, the most powerful tool that you have is being employed, and that's your focus.
Yeah.
When you're focused on something, you're in that timeless state, and you're being present. You'll notice. Now, let me ask you this: when you're in that state, are you thinking about the future or the past, or is your focused attention on what you're doing? Is there fear in what you're doing at all, or is there such an attraction to it that there's no need to pull the attention out because nothing else is as interesting? Do you know what I'm saying? Do you feel those things?
Absolutely.
Now, let me ask you this. Absolutely. Do you think it's possible to force that into yourself? No, you can't.
I think that there's a way in which you can invite those things to happen rather than force them. Like, there's a great Stravinsky quote where he said, I get up and I play piano all day and I'm writing all day, and an interviewer says, well, what if the muse doesn't visit? And Stravinsky says, well, I kept my appointment. And I think that there's something about just being present with the instrument that allows those things to happen. And if you're not there with it, they don't happen. Yeah. So I think there is a little bit of a push and pull.
Sure. And speaking of the clock watching here, it's just occurred to me, Steve. I'm cognizant of not wanting to take too much of your time.
How long are your chats here usually?
Don't
ask.
It's called the Guitar Hour, but it's routinely.
It's a lie.
It's a lie. So,
okay, I'll be happy to do a little more.
Well, in fact, why don't we, Dan? has these sort of 3 questions that are often invites some interesting discussion. So why don't you do the 3 questions, Dan?
Yeah. So I've got 3 questions. We pretty much ask everyone most of the time. So the first one is, this is gigs that you've played, like a best gig and worst gig. Now, the worst gig can just be a funny story. It doesn't have to be, man, I hate that country, I'm not playing there, or anything like that.
Oh, well, I've had some god-awful gigs. Well, probably, okay, I believe I ended an American David Lee Wrathe tour at Red Rocks and started a Whitesnake tour at Red Rocks. And both times it was snowing.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if you've ever tried to play the guitar in the snow. It doesn't work. It was a terrible guy. I remember I was with Whitesnake and I stepped out to do my solo and I couldn't move my fingers at all. And I just look at Adrian and I'm just like, help. But that was a challenging, we all have challenging gigs. I've had things thrown at me that have knocked me out.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Okay, here's an interesting one. It was the best and the worst gig I ever had rolled into one.
That's perfect.
And I still can't quite explain it, but I was in Madrid and I had 2 shows in one night because it sold so well they put another show on, So I also had like a very high fever. And I was sick. I was really sick, right? Don't know how I got through the first show. And I just thought that, it was one of those times where you just chalk it up to, man, I hope that never happens again. But then I had to do the second show. So the second show, something very interesting happened. I was very sick. And I went out there and I just started playing and something very interesting happened. I don't know if I was hallucinating or what, but I was playing really well. And I actually felt like I was about a foot off the ground. Everything felt like I was in a state of, it was very surreal. You know what I mean? So that was bizarre and beautiful.
Amazing. The guy that runs our band, he likes getting into that state. So if he's ill, he's like, oh, this is going to be great on stage. I'm going to feel like...
Yeah, I wasn't taking drugs, though. So
that was going to be the follow-up question, Steve.
Yeah, right?
He means, he likes getting ill. He kind of likes that performing stage where he's like, he kind of, loves it.
It's funny because that always happens to me whenever I drop acid.
So question 2 is if you could jam with any player or musician, dead or alive.
Well, I feel like I've jammed with them all that I'd like to. Dead or alive. It would have been nice to jam with Jocko. I think he had great ears and he could follow what the way that he would follow you is pretty brilliant. A lot of people I'd love to have played with, but I really feel fortunate to have played with so many of the people that I've always hoped to play with. I like playing with anybody that listens, and I can go wherever they go. I do this wonderful sort of ritual in my Vi Academy, the camps that I do. We have, sometimes up to around 200 campers, and I jam with every one of them. And some of my favorite jamming experiences have come about with some of those campers, even especially the ones that are just very sort of not very talented and innocent. Because sometimes you get guys and they want to shred, they want to show you what you can do, what they can do, and they're so rare that you come across anybody that knows how to listen. That's one of the things. If I was going to point out one thing that I've noticed is lacking in amateur musicians is the ability to listen and respond appropriately in a sharing, co-creative way, as opposed to being myopic you know. So I remember I was doing, okay, this is great. I was doing one of my camps, and there was this girl that I've known for many years that sometimes fans become friends. And she was at the camp, and she can't really play very well at all. Like, you know, going to hit one string, she might hit two, you know? And she came up and I started jamming with her. And there was something really nice about completely removing my own musical, infinity, so to speak, and just focusing on where she was at and making a musical co-creative statement with her. It was just amazing and fantastic, because whatever she played, I was listening so intensely. We made music out of it. And for some reason, she didn't really know what she was playing, but for some reason, everything she played, there was an innocence in it that allowed me to engage in a way that created really something cool, really cool. So I guess if I could choose to play with anybody, it would be very uneducated people that love what they're doing.
Nice answer.
Yeah, man. Lovely.
That's a great answer.
Is that where you like jamming with me, Tom?
No comment. No, I'm joking.
Could be the only reason.
So the last question is, if you could, recommend any maybe unknown player or musician that you've potentially got into that people might not have heard of.
You guys know Matteo Mancuso? Yeah, he's a beast. Daniel Guitardo, watch him. Somebody that you might not know. Well, you guys probably be the ones that could turn me on to.
It doesn't have to be guitar players. It could be any music that all you feel needs more people to listen to.
Corey Henry. There's this new breed of monstrous, profoundly inspired and talented young musicians that are coming out, and I've been waiting for this, and it's fascinating. There's these young guys that just their ability to hear and respond is so above and beyond anything I've seen in any of our historical musicians. And this is just me. It doesn't mean anything. It's just me and what I know, which is probably more limited than a lot of people think, But Jacob Collier, he's one of these guys one of these kids that are just... It's a new level of inspiration, and whether you like the music or not, it's okay if you like it or not. It's just watching the way these guys create instantaneously, flawlessly, and effortlessly is just unbelievable. There was a couple more. Oh, there's do you know Dirty Loops? Guys ever hear that band?
Yeah.
Those guys are all freaks. That's the level of young musicianship that's coming into the world. That's so interesting to see.
Yeah, it's extraordinary time for just generally musicianship nowadays, especially because you can see it and hear it all now. All the stuff that was hidden away that you would never have seen before is suddenly bubbled to the surface thanks to Instagram and all the obvious platforms. So we now get to experience it.
It's one of those things that when we were younger, you always had the concept of the guy that was better than you, that was like in a hut in, I don't know, out of Mongolia.
Yeah.
Then obviously that person exists, but you never saw them. But now we do see that person there. So it's like we have this wonderful
multiple times a day.
To
it's amazing. It's amazing.
Constant inspiration of like, and we talk sometimes about the sort of the flip side of that. It's super inspiring and it's like daunting as well at times. But it's overall on balance. I think that the connectivity of how we have access to this stuff is truly a wonderful thing, and just in the way that we're able to do this now is it's awesome.
Yeah, have you guys seen that 9-year-old bass player? I don't know his name off the top. He's doing like jazz, funky kind of playing. He's like 9 years old. He makes all these great faces.
Oh, I don't think I know.
I don't know his name. Anyway, you'd know if you saw him because he's got it like that. He's like an old man.
He's got the stank face.
He's got the He's got the whole stank face down.
First thing
90% of the battle really is getting used perfecting the stank face, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, his face looks like what a minor second sounds like.
Great description.
Ooh, one that works. Ooh.
Amazing.
Fantastic.
Well, you guys tell me. Who have you seen? Have you seen some new players that are pretty crazy?
Well, Matteo was the one that was on the tip of my tongue, and he's right up my street as well. So he's the one I was thinking of.
I think we've just spoke about Jacob Collier a few times, in that the stuff that he's doing now, where at his age, it's going to be really interesting to see where he goes with that in 10, 15 years time, when all sorts of other things. I'm not saying, like, he is a young kid, and I still feel young myself, but like when all other things come in, like life experience and all, when all that kind of merges together in a few years' time, and all this sort of experimental stuff, it'd be really interesting to sort of see where he goes with it.
Yeah, that's what I'm waiting to see. It's how well these guys can also join at the hip with the evolution of technology. And I think Jacob is right on that cutting edge too, because he's already developing things that are unique, technology-wise.
Watching him do compositional live streams is like the closest thing you can get to seeing alien life. I think it's just extraordinary.
Yeah,
the speed and accuracy that he works at, from hearing an idea to putting it down onto whatever medium he's placing it onto.
Yeah, it's almost seamless,
instantaneous.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And
it's extraordinary.
It's so interesting to watch him. You've seen some of those videos he's uploaded where he's actually working on a session. I watched one of those, and I knew what he was doing because I do it, but it was amazing how fast. I mean, I'd have to. I'm thinking. I sit and think about these things. He doesn't think about them; they just happen.
Yeah, it's quite extraordinary. I don't really know what to say about
that's like
it.
It's a new brain muscle that I think some people are coming into the world with.
It's got the tech gland.
The tech gland
just in there.
Well, Steve, thank you so much for this.
My pleasure.
This has been absolute. We've hit peak podcast with this. I think we could shut up shop and be very happy with our run. But it's been an absolute honor to have you on and to chat to you in this depth and level. So thank you very much.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you, guys. I love what you're doing here. It's things like this that you're doing that, reach people and give them something during this lockdown, keeps the enthusiasm going. It's sharing the enthusiasm for the guitar. I'm sure there's a lot of people. It's something that I had come to discover later in my career, is that things that you do really do affect other people's lives. And there are people that will watch these posts, these sessions that you guys are doing, with them, without me, and they will be inspired to pick up the instrument, and that can change the quality of their life. So you guys are doing really great stuff. I'm happy to help you out any way I can. And thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve.
Well, I can say, Steve, that you are the reason that we are doing what we're doing. So we can't thank you enough either. So reciprocal in that regard.
All right, you guys rock. Thank you. Have great holidays.
You too.
You too.
Oh yeah, you too, man.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care, man. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Cheers, Steve.
Bye-bye.
That was
Oh man,
Amazing. That was so good.
such a positive dude.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like such a lot of the stuff
He makes you feel like everything's going to be all right.
Yeah, he does. In
your playing, just generally.
Bruce Almighty. in Bruce Almighty, where Morgan Freeman is like God.
Yes.
It's kind of like there should be like a guitar version of that, and then all the motivational speeches and stuff. It's just Vi comes out of the ceiling in like a white gown, and it's just like, it's going to be fine, man.
Yeah, it's so true. Yeah, great.
Yeah, that was really cool. I mean, I totally wasn't expecting him to be actually on vacation, so to do that again, it's just really cool, and all got the good feels at the moment, which coming out of the back end of this year is certainly not a bad thing. Well needed. And thanks to all of you guys for listening to the show throughout this year. I think we may have 1 or 2 episodes left in 2020. Some more cool, interesting, exciting things and some nice bonus content coming up. But I just want to say a huge thanks to everyone that's been supporting us on Patreon over this last 12 months, and especially those guys at the Executive Producer Plus level, who are Alan Dela Cruz, Andy French, Austin Travis, Dave Cookson, David Kisselbaugh, Elliot DeVries, George Nicola, James Wendt, Jira Papek, Jonathan Murrell, Mark Lee, Martin Mason, Matt Burtwistle, Maxime Kaczynski, Michael Larson, Michael Norris, Michael Smith, Mike Petty, Nick Gauntlet, Nico Acas, Norman Taylor, Paskin794, Pat De Jong, Robert S. Leher, Sam Oxley, Sam Whiting, Tim Bennett, Ulf Schwark, Volkan Bakirdan, and Will Pusey. Thanks, guys. I think we're just going to sign off and go into the extra minutes because this has already been another beast of an episode. So stay well, everyone, and I'll speak to you next week. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
If you can, say in the situation where you're doing the boring jazz mag work.
Can I not call it jazz mag work? What? I didn't say that. I said jazz. What did I say? I don't know.
It's too late, Beebs. It's too late.
Looking through the Jazz Mag classifieds.
It's now the new BB meme, and it should also be the it should also be the what's it called? The I've got brain failure.
Safe word.
The safe word.
BB's Jazz Mags.
Yeah, exactly. You're gonna have to edit that in now.
I'm gonna have to edit that into the main podcast.
Oh, we should have got Steve to say it.
So, Dan, what is this week's safe word?
BB's Jazz Mags.
Oh.
We're going with it.